It's a real pleasure to be here today at Mindspeak. I'd like to thank everyone here, old faces, new faces. And it's great to be hosting Michael Macharia. Mike is a loving father, a husband, out and out African entrepreneur, mentor, visionary, and patriot. Michael, popularly known as Mike, is married to Connie. They have a baby son called Leo. And fatherhood has helped shape Mike's vision as a thinker and inspirational leader. For Mike, a true maverick entrepreneur, inspiration is key to success in business, what drives him as an individual and as a businessman. Mike was telling me the story about also my favorite advertisement ever, and he was describing to me being 30 years old, walking around the streets of New York, going into a bookshop when he was 30, and it was something I did too, Mike. You know, when I really thought I'd made it. I think I was 28, and I was in New York, and it was just I just walked through the city, and Mike comes across this poster in the bookshop in Brooklyn, and of course it's the Apple, the very famous Apple story. Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. About the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things, they push the human race forward. And while some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius, because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. And I like to think that some of us in the audience are the crazy ones as well. And Mike describes that as the DNA of himself and his Sevenseas family. Mike is CEO of one of the fastest growing ICT businesses in Africa, home to an eclectic mix of more than 130 professionals, not just from the ICT sector, I like this, but doers, technologists, entrepreneurs, artists, thinkers, and engineers. Mike says he's overseeing what he likes to describe as organized chaos. Personal philosophy driven by a mantra of collective prosperity over individual achievement. A shared purpose will help to create a lasting legacy. Passionate about technology, how it can be used to transform Africa in the way we live, work, play, and govern. They've expanded Sevenseas into several African countries, not just Kenya. Philosophy is transforming lives, changing communities, and this area of specialization, health. Of course, we heard about the very big GE, General Electric transaction that Mike's involved in. Citizen services, this is the Huduma centers that Mike's been championing, social services, security, and job creation. Mike is a qualified chartered accountant, founder, CEO of Sevenseas Technologies, which he started when he was 25 years old, like a lot of you guys in the room. Recognized in the top 40 under 40 Kenyans list by the Business Daily, been featured in Time magazine, The Economist, attended numerous development courses, Strathmore, Spain's IESE Business School, a member of the Young Presidents Organization. And from very humble beginnings, Sevenseas has grown from a tech startup to a major respected corporate player in the African technology arena. Mike also gives back to the community via the sponsorship and launch of the Knowledge for Life initiative, a program focused on enabling students to understand and get better career direction. Mike's committed to nurturing young talent has manifested itself in SST's participation in the Presidential Digital Talent Program. This initiative was designed in line with the country's Vision 2030 and the ICT Master Plan developed by the ICT Authority. Many other accomplishments, founding curator of the Kenyan chapter of the World Economic Forum, Global Shapers Community, was one of 19 young global leaders. WEF, actually January was also one of those. Well done. Unique multi-stakeholder community of more than 900 exceptional global leaders. chairman of KITOS, the Information Technology and Outsourcing Society. And a couple of weeks back, we were together at the inaugural first ICT National Innovation Forum, where a lot of strides were made, and Mike, I'm sure, will tell you about that. Particularly, they've set up a fund, so if you've got a great idea, this is now the place to go and get some money to get that idea going. You can connect with Mike via LinkedIn or on Twitter. I'm sure by now you've seen the tweets. And just from a personal point of view, you know, I met Mike recently, properly. I'd heard about him from so many people, and then we finally met, and I spent a lot of time with him. And what I appreciated was an incredible clarity of thinking. His mind is like a sharp blade. And after 45 minutes, because what I find here is people's meetings are way too long. Mike is tight, it's quick, and it's packed with a lot of stuff. And I compliment you, Mike, on the clear thinking and speed of execution. It's a great thing to see. I would now like to stand down and have Mike stand up and say Karibu, Mike, to MindSpeak, and we look forward to hearing your story.
I would say that I'm very grateful to be here, and it took a long time to convince me to come up here. Not because I don't like talking to all of you, but I guess life starts at 40. And at 40, you need to start doing some crazy things, I guess. And the first crazy thing is to be here, right? which is I think, one of the things I want to start doing is sort of sharing my story or building the country together. Now, I'm honored to see all of you here. I can see some of my industry partners, some of my friends, some people who started careers in my organization. Today, I think they are all over the place across the country. I can see I see many familiar faces. So, good morning. Now, the first question is always been, who am I, right? And I think you have different lenses in how you see me, depending on who you are and where we've interacted. To start with, I believe I'm a happy soul. I believe that happiness is critical to moving on in terms of executing big challenges. I'm a patriot. I think I'm very passionate about Africa and about Kenya. And I'm very passionate about youth. I'm very passionate about solving problems for the bottom of the pyramid. You know, not the upper class, not the middle class, but the bottom of the pyramid. I'm also believe I'm a brother and a son. I'm sure I can see somebody who I think I'm related to here. I think I see somebody who I guess must have heard about what I was presenting. And at the same time, I'm a husband and a mentor. Today, what I look at is what is my big drive. And one of the things I look at is, and I can really stand up tall and talk about, is helping people discover their own uniqueness. In the journey I've had to date, I started a company 20 years ago, 15 years ago, when I was 25. What I've learned is that, how do I help other people achieve their dreams to achieve mine? Some of you here, and some of the people probably watching this, know that meeting us and connecting with me at some point has changed their lives in multiple ways. Some of them became entrepreneurs because they needed a push, they needed a tipping point. Others have transformed their careers from doctors to technologists. Others have moved into totally different businesses. And I think enabling somebody to transform is critical. And I think that's what I call my big, huge, audacious goal. It's helping people achieve that greatness. And I can give you a story on how I look at it. Everybody today, I believe, is a diamond. And you never find two similar diamonds. Now, but diamond, the common product from diamond, the common DNA for a diamond is carbon, right? But you get carbon in its raw format, you don't see the beauty of it. So what I try and do, and the way I look at life, is that everybody is a diamond. Now the challenge for us is to have a different lens, to look at that carbon in a way that you can shape it to become the diamond. And that's my philosophy when I interact with everybody else. And it's always very difficult when I'm doing interviewing, when I'm interviewing people in an organization, when I have my structured HR teams or department heads, and I'm looking at somebody and I can see something that they can't see. And trying to convince the team then, because it's a collective team, right, that person would deliver what I'm looking for in a different the different view is always the most complicated part of the whole engagement. And the challenge I've found is that when I see a diamond in you, how do I convince everybody else that you're that diamond? And how do I make sure that together, when I get that rough and get the diamond up, and when it glitters, everybody then wants collectively to say, I saw it. But before it got there, very few people are willing to make that concerted effort towards enabling that carbon to become the diamond. Now that's, I believe, the journey that I live every day. And I look at my life and I look at what we're trying to do today in terms of a collective prosperity. Yesterday or 2 days ago, we had the president talk about in the State of Nation address, talks about one of the things that is holding us back is infighting, right? We don't look at collectively in terms of, we don't look at Kenya from a collective vision. Constantly, my battle in life is about who is going to be the first person with me on the dance floor. I've had mentors who have danced with me. My first mentor danced with me. He listened to me one time on a plane and said, interesting, I'm going to be with you on this journey, right? The next guy I met on somewhere else, again, said the same thing. When I met Bob, he said, Mike, I think I can dance with you. When I met Joshua, he said, Mike, I think we can get on the dance floor. But it's always the second guy and third guy that makes a difference, okay? Now, constantly our challenges, I'm talking about everybody, mentors, bankers. You know, sometimes you're an entrepreneur, you're looking for money. You've got a dream, and you go to this bank, and you meet this manager, and he looks at you like this, and he listens to you, and he says, okay, I think this is not bankable, right? Then within the value chain, you meet somebody who is willing to dance with you. And that person changes the cost of things. You have customers. Customers, you go and do a pitch, right? You're a startup, you're growing a business. You go and do this great pitch, and you look around the room and figure out, who am I going to get to the dance floor with me first, right? Who is the first person in this team here that is willing to come over to us? And that's part of how you learn to pitch and talk to people. And eventually in a committee, you find who are the first people you're going to bring to your table. You've got my wife. My wife, I think, also is dancing with me on the podium because she had to be crazy enough to marry me, I guess. But you've also got employees and partners, some of the partners and employees you have. Some of those employees trying to convince them. You're a startup company. When you started the business, for instance, it was difficult to attract talent, very difficult, because the way we are socialized, and this is, I talked about 2000, we're socialized that you need to work for a large multinational. You definitely need to work for KCB, for instance, right? Which is okay. But the point is, when you tell them you need to work for who? For Sevenseas Technologies, they say, who is that now? So really, what you're trying to do, you cannot sell a brand. What you have to sell yourself. You have to be the crazy guy dancing to allow that next great guy to work for you. So you find some of the greatest people that work for us came as a result of them agreeing to join me on the dance floor. And also, at the same time, you also need to join the dance. So there's some people, crazy people you look at and figure out, how can I join them in the dance? And that's how you find yourself in social groups. When you find yourself in global groups, let's say, for instance, I'm in World Economic Forum, where we have young global leaders. I think these are crazy people. These 900 people across the world are crazy people. When you listen to them and you champion them and you work with them, you feel you need to be with them on the dance floor. But in most cases, you've got to be careful not to get to the dance floor without clarity why you're dancing. Because eventually, you don't want to be the guy being left out. So you just get into the dance floor and dance for the sake of dancing. And that's why sometimes you lose it. Now, based on that, and my whole story is going to be around what has happened to my life in terms of those tipping moments that have made a difference. And the tipping moments were defined by the people who came to my life during those moments when I was the lone guy on the dance floor. But to start that, the first thing is to look at what is my core, what I look at critical building blocks to my life. The first thing I look at is happiness. I think it took a long time for me to understand this. I traveled, I read lots of stuff about happiness at work, happiness at home, happiness in your life. And I looked at happiness in a very interesting way. And we use this philosophy in my organization. So let's look at happiness. Let's look at happiness. The first thing, if you look at the center soul, look at an onion. Consider yourself, look at an onion. When you're in the kitchen and you look at an onion, it's got different layers, right? As you go deeper in the onion and you cut the onion, you've got the most critical part in the onion, which is very pungent, right? That is what we call your soul, which is what you see in yellow there. And the soul, around the soul, you then have your external self. Your external self is you, okay? You say, I've got a degree in this. I want to become better. I want to look good, right? That's part of you. I want to lose weight. That is the external self. You then have the family layer, which is made up of your kids or your brothers and sisters, your family, your mother and father, your ecosystem from a family point of view. You then have work, right? What you consider your career, which is the next layer of the onion. Then you have got community. Community could be around you. Community could be You're in the community, right? You look at your community, could be around your village, could be around your community, whatever. Could be around what you consider community. Could be a community of friends, could be a community lottery, you could be in multiple different kind of communities. The next thing is your country, because without a community, a country is part of the community and then to a country. Then you have the world as it looks. And that is what we call the spheres of influence across the various ecosystems, from your soul to the world. Now, today, when I look at my life from this point of view, from the world, I look at myself as a shaper. From the country point of view, I look at myself as a patriot. From my work, I look at myself as an entrepreneur and an employer. But what really matters is the balancing of all those ecosystems. How do you balance those ecosystems? Within that, you look at 5 fundamentals. You look at achievement. The first thing to ask you, am I achieving something within my life? Am I achieving, when I look at external self, what am I achieving? And that's why you say, I've got a BSc degree in this, I've got an MBA in this, because you feel you're achieving, right? At an external level. Then you look at meaning. So I ask you, what's meaning? When you do your work, for instance, you're an accountant, what's the meaning of what I do in terms of transformation? Sometimes you get into jobs, and there's no meaning, some of the jobs you do. You ask yourself, why am I really in this job? There's really no meaning. My challenge is defining meaning in all those ecosystems. Engagement, for instance. How can you be engaged more with your community and with the country? For instance, I am engaged, I feel I'm engaged with the country because I believe I have to be able to make change, because I think engagement at the level, not only at my company level, at a national level, is critical. And also engagement at an Africa level is important, right? But also engagement with your soul is also critical, because that's the moment you feel yourself as centered. Then you look at the relationships you create. Across all this value chain, you get to know people. You get to create a lot of relationships along the way, which is important, whether at the global level, at the local level, at your family level. These are all relationships that you create. Then you've also got positive emotion. How do you create energy, positive energy, in all these ecosystems? And I can guarantee you, if any of those 5 fundamental areas in my life, when you realize I'm getting negative energy in terms of a project or a relationship or a community activity, I evaluate. Am I getting meaning from it? Am I achieving something from it? Is there engagement? Do I have the requisite energy to propel me through? Am I creating the right partnerships as I move along? Now, if any of those 2 verticals, any of those 2 core ideals are broken, then I tend to quit, right? I say this is not important, and that's how most of us quit our jobs. Why do we quit our jobs? When we feel, for instance, let's think about it. You've got great buddies at a workplace, relationships, right? You're very happy when you go to work, okay? And you're somehow engaged, but there's no achievement, you're not achieving anything, you're not having any meaning. So you can as well say you can go to work and smoke pot, right? Because you're happy, right? It's a happiness situation, right? Just happy, there's no meaning, there's no achievement, right? So, and most likely, if any of those 2 fail, you'll quit your job, right? So I think that happiness, from my point of view, is that if you look at happiness from across the ecosystem, this is what we look at. Now, the challenge is, how do you balance this whole ecosystem? Because it's impossible. One time you feel at a workplace it's balanced. At the home front, it's a challenge. Sometimes you feel I'm exerting myself at the home front, but at the workplace it's suffering. Sometimes we decide I don't care anything beyond my workplace. I don't care about the country. So long as I'm happy, I'm going to stay around my picket fences and be happy around myself. Now the challenge has always been, how far can you extend yourself across these 7 dynamics? Right, and for us, and one of the questions I receive from a lot of people who meet me, how do you balance? You look like you're very busy at work, you're a good mentor, at the same time, constantly, you're at the national level championing stuff. I see you in Africa. How do you balance this? I think this is a journey that I can tell you, balancing all these ecosystems to a point where you have the right equilibrium is constantly a battle. One moment you're happy here, one moment you're quite disappointed here. That is generally the journey of life. And that's why I'm referring to as a happiness wheel, because if eventually you balance this off, right, then you're happy in some point or another. Now, essentially when you die, and I always tell some of my friends, if I die, it's very easy to write my eulogy, because the way you write it is you say, okay, what did this guy achieve? Okay, what did he achieve? From a relationship point of view, it's very easy. We don't put an ad or a card to tell you to come to my funeral. You just come, right? Because you're in a relationship with me, I guess, right? That's how you come. In terms of positive emotion, the reason why people cry and people talk about you fondly is because you had some level of positive energy on them, right? And eventually look at engagement. How engaged are you with the society? How engaged are you with your country? How you engage with you, the world? How engaged are you with your community, with your family? And finally, what is your meaning of life? So it's very easy to write somebody's geology based on these fundamentals, okay? So next time, and I hope not in the near future, you're told to write somebody's geology, look at it from this point of view. It may challenge your thinking a little bit to some extent. The next thing is we have also found a way to execute happiness in our workplace. One of the things we have, and we had been driving for a long time, was happiness in our workplace. So we had a happiness day, which was typically once a month. We had a happiness day. These are all happiness activities. One time, if you look at the top right here, we would go to a play, right? We'd go into one of the theaters and then act what we want as a country. If Kenya was a happy country, which I think it is, how would we want it to be? So this guy would act like a policeman, this guy would act like a tout, this guy would act like a businessman and say, okay, why am I bribing? Okay? The guy would explain, I'm not going to bribe because I believe collectively, if I don't bribe you, this will happen. So it allows us as an organization, we believe that happiness, once you have happiness as the center of the organization, then you tend to achieve much more as an organization. Now, what happens as you go along? The next thing is, where is your lighthouse? Now, constantly, as you battle with life, and there are many challenges. Challenges in terms of, especially when you look at the ecosystem, when you look around you, lots of corruption. When you look around you, we complain a lot, right? When you look around you, other people trying to bring you down. How do you manage that? How do you create a harmonious balance? And how do you ensure that you don't lose your cool when everything around you is, you're being challenged on a continuous basis? The way I try and do that is to give myself, I'd look at it and say, if I was be told to shed away all my virtues, and I have many virtues, right? If I'm only told to get 3 virtues, only 3, not 10, you have many virtues that you don't use. And most of you, if I told you to describe your virtues, and maybe you can try, just think about what are those 3 virtues. Let's say I'm not sure what religion you are. If God came and said, I'm going to take everything away and leave you with only 3 virtues, what are those 3 virtues you take? Many people and I talk to, sometimes we have a challenge discovering what we are in terms of 3 virtues. In my case, I look at clarity of thought, as Alia said. He's met me several times. Passion and persistence. And the way I question myself on this is, and the way I look at clarity of thought and passion, there are times when in our lives, in my life especially, that everything has looked so bleak. But the passion and commitment to execute that is what keeps you moving ahead. And there are times all of us see that maybe I need to quit, right? I need to quit this journey. But passion, I find myself constantly defaulting to my DNA settings, which are these 3 fundamental values or virtues. Persistence, there are times when I've pushed, and not given up. And I find that constantly when I look at my life, I look at those 3 qualities, and I always keep defaulting to these 3 qualities. Clarity of thought. You know, constantly around our lives, there's lots of chaos. Chaos everywhere. You know, when you go out here, there's chaos. This is more organized chaos, I can see here. But there's a lot of chaos around us, right? Politicians, open the newspapers, it's chaos. You open the Twitter, there's everything and everything. How do you, in that whole chaotic environment, still have clarity? Okay? Now, that is constantly in our battle, whether it's in a business battle or a life battle. How do you ensure the clarity of execution, clarity of making decisions based on that? And those are the 3 virtues I use constantly as I look at my life. But those 3 virtues also have, it's almost like a double-edged sword. Those same virtues, in strength, is also a great weakness. Because out of the weaknesses you find, when you're too passionate, sometimes you don't know when to quit. You don't know when to say that's enough, right? Sometimes you're always redlining, right? And sometimes redlining too much can be also challenging. So how do you ensure you have sort of a speed governor to ensure that you don't have that tipping point, right? Persistence. Sometimes you push too much. Sometimes when you push too much, it also comes out as being extremely, extremely brutal in areas. And there are people who have said, Mike, how can you push us that hard? How possibly can you do that, right? And recently I was hosting this national innovation event, and I had a team of 10 people, 15 people. And recently we had the CS threw a thank you cocktail for the team. And one of the team members said, Mike pushed us to a point we're breaking, right? But I told these guys, there are 2 options. This is the first National Innovation Forum in the country. It has flopped 2 times. We cannot flop the 3rd time, right? So unfortunately, if I chair this, we'll have to push it to where it needs to be. And I tell them eventually, when we eventually stage the whole event, And we managed to secure $1 billion shillings and set up Enterprise Kenya. I told the guys, you know, if I'd not pushed to that point, right, would not be where here. We would not be in this current position. And today, most of them say that was the best time of their lives because I was able to push them beyond their comfort zone. But at the same time, that can come. A lot of people quit before they realize themselves. Even carbon, you have to put extreme pressure for you to become a diamond, right? You need, for you to really know yourself, you need to be able to exert yourself. But that can also sometimes be very challenging because in an environment where people don't know you well, they'll tend to say you're extremely pushy in terms of achieving one objective. The next thing is clarity of thought. You know, sometimes you go to meetings and you listen to somebody, you can know they're really bullshitting, right? Sorry, French. And you know what? You say, my God, how can this person be? What are they saying? And you just hold yourself to say, my God, you know, you paint, you write on a piece of paper, you try to wait for them to finish, and you say, okay, fine, get it. How do you ensure that at that point, you just, because negative you'll stand up and say, please hold on, excuse me, just hold on, right? Can you stop it? Now, the challenge has always been how to control yourself and to give everybody an opportunity, right, to complete that journey in terms of conversation, right? So in all these virtues lies also negativity. So the challenge is constantly balancing that, because I think in life we've got lots of contradictions. How do you ensure that as these become your core virtues and also your strengths, they also don't become your downfall? So this is and something I need to share with you that I think is critical in terms of defining who you are in moments that are extremely treacherous, right? But constantly, if you have your lighthouse, irrespective of what happens, right? Once you know yourself and you default to these settings, this is what happens to you. Even in extreme challenging circumstances, you always default towards these three initiatives. Now, you know, family is critical, and we look at what really matters. You know, as we build a business, and as you build many things around you, and you accomplish many things, generally what you look at is reservoir, right? You have to go back to people you care about, right? One of the things I look at my wife and my son is my reservoir of energy, right? No, they're different reservoirs. There's a reservoir of goodwill, okay, which is reservoir of goodwill where constantly you create value, okay? There's reservoir of respect. People, when you keep your word, your behavior. So this is reservoir that you build on, right? Now, I think that, and also reservoir of life. Reservoir of life is your healthcare. Now, one day or your spiritual inclination. Now, that's the reservoir of life. But I think for me, and what I believe is my reservoir of energy is my wife and my son, because constantly, when everything looks so challenging around the world, the people you can default to, they don't judge you in whatever format. They just believe in you and say, we can do this. And my young one, when I look at him, he just believes you can do the best. So one of the things that I look at, family is critical to how I see my future success and how I'm going to deal with my future challenges. And this is what Ali said. One time I was walking around New York, and maybe I'll tell the story better than Ali. But one day I was walking around New York, and you know, these days it was drizzling, I remember. It was in Brooklyn. It was my first time in New York, accidentally, really. I was really not planning to be in New York. It's one of those days you're in Boston, and you think, why don't I just rush over to New York? And I found this poster. This poster was framed. I was walking and I saw a bookshop. This bookshop had some old books, but this poster was framed. And I got in and looked at it. I thought to myself, my God, this is amazing. I'd never seen it in my life, right? This is, you know, this is the Steve Jobs Think Different campaign, right? Or the Apple Think Different campaign in 1997. And I thought to myself, here to the crazy one, I thought to myself, every part of this message resonated with me. Okay, I thought about how do I look at people. Generally, when I look at people, when I'm working with people, I want to see how can I plug this round peg into this square hole. It's called lateral thinking. We think too horizontally. How do you think more laterally, right? How do you ensure yourself, and how do you push yourself beyond the common platforms that you have? So this really inspired me, and I've looked at it constantly in my life, and it sort of shaped a lot of things that I do in my life. When I think that I'm pushing it too much, when I think we're too crazy, our ideas are too out of control, this is one of the things that I look at and say, okay, I think this is something that I aspire, and I think there are other great people in the world who also see things different, see things the way we see them. Again, recently in the same National Innovation Conference, somebody told us we are crazy people. Told us, you guys who are in this event or who organize this are out of control, right? But we told them, you know, we are creative. We are creative distractors. We destroy creatively, because constantly, if you let things be the way they are, right? If constantly we complain about traffic, we complain about our lives, we complain about many things. Why can't we creatively destroy to create value again, right? Sometimes you have to think out of the box, right? We hope to solve the same problems over and over again. Sometimes when you're whole, you need to stop digging, right? And decide, okay, I think I need to stop digging, and come out and view where exactly am I? Why am I digging this hole, right? So constantly, and the way we look at it, and the way I look at people who work with me and people I interact with, I'm always looking for people who are crazy enough to be able to be with me on the dance floor. And these are not many. And you understand when you look at life from this point of view, you don't have enough of these people across us. And how do you nurture the future generation to start coming out from their boxed way of thinking to more creative ways of thinking and solving problems? Because our Africa problems are going to be solved by us thinking out of a box and crazy enough and challenging what we do. But ultimately, it's about doing. You know, we can think, we can be inspired, but 99% of it is perspiration. You need to work towards it. So becoming a doer is critical. Most of us like talking about big things. We meet in restaurants, we meet in art cafes, we meet in many places. We talk about great things. We meet in cocktail parties. But the problem we have as a country is that we talk too much, right? Then there are very few doers who are able to stand up and say, I'm going to get this done. So a challenge for you today and for all of us and anyone else who is listening to this is how do we ensure that we get to the dance floor and participate and do our own journey towards getting there, because it's important for you to participate in this journey. The next one, and as I close this, one of the things I look at is how do you take this forward, moving forward? Now, I was a lone nut in many cases. I had many people come and participate with me in the dance floor. And some of them who joined me, who made us successful, other people constantly, and it's everywhere across the value chain. Bankers, as I mentioned, mentors. Now what happens in most of us is when you become successful when your journey there to become successful, you tend to forget that the people who came to dance with you on the dance floor. So sort of you sit on this seat and you say, it's not my problem. And the challenge for us as you become successful is how do you ensure that you become the first follower for many other people who are also trying to be the lone nut out there. And it's a story of the ladder, where most of us are given a ladder to climb and to grow up and to become successful. When we get to the top, what we do, we pull off the ladder, not to allow the other people to come to us, right? And that is part of our challenges as a country, that what we need to figure out is how do we allow many other people to be successful? Because when you're collectively successful, you create a lot of value, a lot of traction. So our challenge has always been, even as you become successful, how do you ensure you create a platform for many other people to become successful? Even if it does not necessarily benefit you, how do you ensure you create not one ladder, 10 ladders for other people to climb as you go up? And that's why I'm very passionate about some of the initiatives, why it's a presidential skill development program. I'm talking about why are we doing 300 students? We should do 15,000, right, intern students. Why are we? There are so many things we could be doing if we so looked at it from a collective prosperity point of view. And today, as I end here, the challenge has always been, how do you emulate? As opposed to pulling people down, how do you emulate? How do you learn? How do you get inspired? And collectively, we make it happen. So my theme and my message today has always been, collectively, how can we create prosperity, not only for this country, for Africa and the world, in terms of creating value step by step, but also enabling other people to walk the journey with you. And when you become successful, collectively making sure that everybody is successful with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Can you just tell us a little bit about where the business is today, how many countries? I know 140 employees, just so a bit of an idea.
Okay, thank you. We are 15 years old this year. Actually, this month we started the company 15 years ago exactly. Actually, interesting. I was turned 40 in March. I started the company in March. I think I was crazy at 25 also. So we today have grown into multiple areas. We, as a journey in the company, we started as a technology business, purely technology company, executing third-party solutions from the likes of IBM, Microsoft, and the likes of these companies. But what has happened to our company in the last 15 years, we've transformed greatly, because the reality of the game here is that as you grow, even the multinationals also come and compete with you. Because initially, when they started 15 years ago, the multinationals were not here, right? So we really represented the multinationals. Now, what has happened as a company has become more open and more prosperous and lots of opportunities, most of these multinationals come and compete with you. So we have to create a value proposition that is unique to us. So what we chose to do in the last 5 years, we chose to totally change our direction as a company and focused more on vertical areas. So we focused more on health, okay? We focused more on social services. We focused more on security or internal security projects or citizen services. We said, look, we need to be known to transform lives. And we need to be known to transform lives of people who are at the bottom of the pyramid, right? So what we've done as a company, we've had to slowly transform. It's been a painful journey, transforming everybody from thinking, my career, I need to become a network engineer. I need to become the next big storage engineer. Telling them, it doesn't matter. You need to change your mindset to using technology to transform lives. And that in itself has created a big momentum in the organization. And that's how we ended up doing a lot of work with the likes of GE, a lot of work in the areas of transforming the country, a lot of national transformation agendas. And I also believe that making those transformational projects from a health, social services point of view, these are also replicable business models that you can replicate in Africa. Because my value proposition when I go to Nigeria is, yes, I can come to Nigeria and be able to transform the healthcare industry similarly to what we've done in Kenya. So it's constantly using Kenya as a platform to showcase our solutions and then to export this across Africa.
Thank you. Can I take a question?
How much is your company worth? 2, would you be interested in floating shares in the stock market so that Kenyans can also have an opportunity to benefit from what you have achieved? 3, what's your take on capital gains tax when companies are being taxed the extra money?
You've mentioned the fact that you are interested in the lower end of the pyramid, and one of the frontiers on the lower end of the pyramid has been financial inclusion. And I've seen banks and telecom companies quickly moving to fill that gap. But looking at what your company provides, haven't really seen a lot of passion on financial inclusion. My question would be, is it something you're exploring, or is it something you're interested in?
When I talk about collective prosperity, I'm curious to know what has been your experience regarding university and industry linkage, in the sense that there's a lot of research that's generated in universities, there's a lot that students are doing, but now bridging the gap such that it can be utilized in society, so that number one, we're reducing the unemployment rate, and also we are benefiting industry as well as students. So just your view on that. Something else, the other question, which is just top of my head, curiosity, is I've seen Sevenseas has gone into Zimbabwe. If you ask the average person in Nairobi about Zimbabwe, there's a negative perception. So my question is, what is your take on going into relatively seen unfavorable environments and doing business, and how has your experience been there?
I will start with the Zimbabwe story, and I'll tell you what made me go to Zimbabwe first. You see, our generation, our current generation was, okay, let's say 20 years ago, our parents, or 30 years ago, the best our parents could do if you're an entrepreneur, you stayed in Kisumu, right? Or you stayed in Mombasa, you stayed in Nairobi. Going to Kisumu was difficult, is that correct? Or you needed to stay in Nairobi, because that's how you're conditioned. Then the next generation came and said, no, hold on, we have to go to East Africa. We have to go and conquer East Africa. No, sorry, the next generation said, we need to create Kenyan-based companies. So you're in Kenya, so you're in Nairobi, you're in Mombasa, and we saw companies that did that, right? And some of you, all of you here, most of you have lived through that generation, seen companies that have moved from Nairobi to become Kenyan companies, right? Then the next lot, which is driven by Joshua and the team, said, look, we need to go to East Africa, right? So we go to Rwanda, we go to Uganda, we go to Tanzania, we go to Burundi, and we go that, right? The next generation, that is us, right, has to go towards Africa, beyond East Africa. I think the challenge we face is fear. I think Kenyan entrepreneurs or businesses tend to go to markets that they feel superior, right? And I'm not saying our neighbors are not superior. It's just that we feel more comfortable. But markets that make us uncomfortable, like Nigeria, very few corporates have managed in Kenya to even dare step in Nigeria, because the Nigerian market just intimidates them. And maybe Joshua can give me a feedback if he's going to be in Nigeria soon as KCB. Now, The challenge is, in those markets lies the opportunity. Because really, if you look at the big markets in Africa, what do you have? Egypt, you have South Africa, you have Nigeria. But how many Kenyan companies have even dared to conquer those markets? How many? I think we're in a great position as a technology company because we don't go with brick and mortar, right? We go with knowledge. And knowledge lies in our hearts, and knowledge lies in how we package it. So we can go to all these markets by conquering some of our solutions that we do locally, and we solve our health problem. We solve maternal health care. We solve our transport integration system. What is stopping you to take that solution to Nigeria? Nothing. We've seen companies today like Mobile Decisioning, one company run by my friend Julius Kula, who has now gone Africa-wide, right? Look at companies like those. They've conquered beyond East Africa, now have gone up to South Africa Now, coming back to Zimbabwe, the first time I went to Zimbabwe, I thought to myself, wow, very good golf courses, too much negative media in the press. Exactly, how does this work? This place seems extremely interesting. Real estate, I look at Zimbabwe, where if you look at where Eden Square is, Westlands, some of the buildings in Westlands today, that is Zimbabwe. That is, you look at Kenya, 10 years ago, that's the real estate you'd see. So if you knew what you knew to do about Westland and Upper Hill, what would you do? You'd be the first person in Nairobi, right? That's the same way you look at Zimbabwe. You look at Zimbabwe, the way you looked at in Kenya 15 years ago. Westlands was nothing, Upper Hill was nothing. Where Joshua's a building, now 20 floors, right? In Zimbabwe, there's a place that you're going to have a building like that. Now, if you as an entrepreneur need to look at that opportunity and exploit, that's the first thing that got me to Zimbabwe, because I think Zimbabwe is about to explode, right? It's just a matter of time. The second, I also met a very interesting entrepreneur, and I'll tell you a story just about this entrepreneur. This entrepreneur today has a business of 500 SAP consultants. So I asked myself, this guy really, sitting in Zimbabwe has 500 SAP consultants? How is that possible? For you to have SAP is a big consulting company, and there's lots of skills, German ERP company. So I asked myself, how is it this guy can have 500, and the biggest Kenyan company, okay, with SAP consultants has 20 or 15. And in South Africa, the biggest company is, let's say, 400 SAP consultants. So I had to go and see him. The guy told me what he did when the currency was crashing, okay, constantly. One day, it will be, today the exchange rate is 90 to the dollar. Tomorrow it will be 180. The next day it will be 300. The next day it will be 1,000. What he did, he had employees. So one day he had 50 employees. The next time his wage bill had gone down by 50% because he was getting paid in dollars. So what he did, as opposed to making that as profit, because he had customers outside Zimbabwe. So as opposed to say that is incremental profit, he said, I'm going to hire another 50 people with a profit. So when the currency dropped again, he'd hire another 50 people. So eventually at 500 people, because his wage bill had dropped his wage bill had dropped by 90%. Is that correct? So he had a bench. So the guy said, okay, listen, now I have a bench of 500 people. What can I do with 500 people? So he began pushing to SAP at the least cost. Consultants that were being outsourced to SAP were at $1,000 a day. He would give them at $200 a day. And they were competent, right? I said, okay, this is interesting. So SAP started hiring his people to implement projects in Botswana, in Dubai, in Seychelles, right? So eventually what has happened to the guy is that he had the skills, right? Then he went to government and told government, you're not automated, right? Your land rates, your city hall, everything, your Ministry of Finance, your Ministry of what, Ministry of Energy. He said, look, I'm going to give you 150 people for free. You pay me when one day you're going to get money. So when I negotiated the SAP license, right, with the SAP company, and he was able to get software for free for the next 5 years. The government can pay when they have money. Because look, software is software. It's a sunken cost anyway. Is that correct? So he took these 150 consultants and dumped them in the ministry. In 10 years, they implemented everything we're trying to implement here now. The financial systems, IFMIs they've been using, liquor licensing, everything the Nairobi County and other counties are trying to do, all that is implemented in Zimbabwe by these 150 guys. So recently they came back and said, Mister, we are fully automated. The guy said, can you give us your bill? So he gave them a bill of $80 million. Right? And he said, yes, we'll pay you. It's working for us, right? So that level of innovation, it's looking, in challenging times, it's looking at innovation, right? And seeing how your challenging moments can turn around and be strengths. And that story I had to tell to mention about Zimbabwe, because I was so inspired. I told him, now we have to become business partners. So eventually today here we are business partners in East Africa. So we own 50% of his business together. Now I think he's about to take it to the I think he's just about to sell his business and take it to the South African Stock Exchange. Now, look, from Zimbabwe, look, that's the opportunity, right? Now, moving onto the area of industry and collaboration, yes, there's need to do industry, university collaboration and research and development. But you see, I've been driving, and I believe one of the things to drive research and development is national projects. Look, we are going to build a commodity exchange at some point. I don't know, I'm not sure how many of you know what a commodity exchange is. It's your NSC towards agricultural trading, right? Now, the challenge is, if I'm sitting in a position to make a decision, I would want to take that project to a university to research how to build that platform, right? That platform built in partnership with the university and private sector will be able to solve and create for us a whole platform of commodity exchange. That platform, eventually, we can resell and take that across Africa. That's the first thing between industry and collaboration, industry and universities. But we need to use national projects to be able to accelerate partnership between ourselves and government. So government needs to put clauses, and that's one of the things we're trying to build and champion. How can we ensure for all government big projects, whether it is highways, for instance, Thika Highway was being built, right? The Chinese have come and built a big highway there, done a great job, we love it. But how many of your engineering students, okay, were built as a result? How many? That's a challenge we face. So we eventually will build everything around us, but we're not going to have any skills to be able to maintain, neither do we have skills that can leverage on what we've learned based on our national projects. That's one of the things we need to look at. Now, and I think that one of the things that I think is great that's happening is the Presidential Skill Development Program. I think that needs to be extended beyond resourcing to government skills, but now resourcing to private sector skills, but an incentive model created that allows us as companies to be able to take even the people we don't need more intern skills. Because I think if I intern in GE, I intern in Safaricom, I intern in KCB or in any other company, and even if KCB are not going to give me a job, you need to intern, let's say, for a year. What happens? As an entrepreneur, when I'm looking to hire, I'll go out and say, who has interned in KCB, who has interned in Safaricom, who has interned in Sevenseas, and I'll hire those people, right? Because the challenge most of us entrepreneurs and startup companies have is having people who have gone through a grading or some level of industry engagement. The next thing is about financial inclusion. Are we interested to get into financial inclusion? I don't believe in reinventing the wheel. There are already enough people doing financial services. Now, why should I again get into that whole financial inclusion? What I do, I think for you to solve big problems, you need to understand the issue of partnerships. Partnerships, because walking a journey alone, you'll walk less. But walking a journey with many other people with you, if your interests are aligned, you walk further. So financial inclusion, anytime I have to do a project in social services or health, I look for a partner who is already doing financial services. I bring them to the table, I partner with them, and based on that, we move forward. Now, I don't have time to reinvent this whole financial switch, gateway. I don't even have the time for that. What I need to do is I need to sort a problem. I need to call the right partner from a financial point of view. Let that be his problem to solve from that point of view. In terms of capital gain tax, look, if you're making money in a country, you need to pay your tax, okay? How do you have to pay your tax. You can't just say that, okay, I've just got this house, I just bought these shares, and now I've made money, I don't want to pay your worth. Exactly. How do you get security? How do you get the roads? So I think you need to pay tax, and we need to start having a philosophy in life to pay tax, right, to build our country. Fine. The government needs to also demonstrate well constantly how they're utilizing our funds, right? And that's why corruption and eradication of this corruption is critical so that all of us feel we have to pay our tax. Now, recently you saw the medical project that came up, right? The government project for healthcare services across all counties. 98 hospitals, we're going to be able to receive MRIs, ultrasounds, renal, which is your kidney dialysis, across the whole country. You can go to a renal center in 1 year if you have kidney dialysis and get it for free. How is that getting paid? It's getting paid through your capital gain tax. It's getting paid through all these other taxes. It's getting paid through your NHIF fee. It's about collective prosperity. The few people who make money needs to pay tax to allow other people to succeed. The next thing is, am I floating my company and how much is my company worth? My company is a private company, right? I'm happy if you want to invest the day I want to take it public. Yes, look, you always need to unlock value for shareholders. Today I have private equity funds invested in my business, a private investor invested in my business. Yes, eventually one way to unlock value is to go to the stock market, right? But I'm going to answer that question a different way. The issue is not about even the stock market. The issue is the growth enterprise market, the GEMS market. Today we've got a GEMS market, which we refer to as penny stocks, right? What do you need to be in a GEMS market? 1 year financial statements, you can even be loss making. The challenge we have is getting enough companies to start listing the GEMS market. But the challenge we also face, you rather put money in land than going to invest in a great idea. You see, so we need to accelerate value by building a GEMS market that allows you any great ideas, such that even if you're not making money. For instance, if many people are told invest in Facebook, at the time it was started, I said, no way, how is that possible? But if there are ideas like those that you can invest through the GEMS market, that would be a great platform for us to start nurturing ideas so that you graduate from a GEMS market, and as you have great ideas, people put money in your organization. It's also the cheapest way to raise capital. I tell you, bank money is expensive. It's easier to go to the stock market and raise capital.
Mike, I just wanted to, before I take some more questions, just touch on a couple of things. Now, I was reflecting on Bill Gates tweeting about M-Pesa, and I thought to myself, that's probably worth millions of dollars just because he's Bill Gates. Silicon Savannah, how do you see it? Is it a replica of California? What is it going to be?
It's a great question, because I think Silicon Savannah is not a place, it's a mindset, right? It's not a place you go, it's a mindset. It's a mindset you wake up every morning and know you're going to make a difference, you're going to innovate. So it's a mindset. I think what we confuse, look, the way I see Silicon Savannah is in Kenya. We need to see Kenya as a place, as a center of African innovation. Whether you're Greek, whether you're Irish, whether you're British, whether you're from Bomet, whether you're from Kisumu, whether you're from Zimbabwe, every time you think about innovation, Kenya should be the hub where innovation can be driven, right? Now, the challenge for us as a country is to enable and create a platform that allows us, right, to be able to create this ecosystem that is global, that allows all these companies to coexist within Kenya. All these entrepreneurs, whether global, whether international, whether local, that is what I believe would be the Silicon Savannah. So Silicon Savannah is about a mindset, and such that when it published in the Economist or Wall Street Journal, it's about a place that has got capability, the right tax systems, the right environment, the right collaboration, the right skill sets, the right infusion and partnership with universities, the right amount of capability that works together to create that value. And also open data sets that allow us, for instance, the open data sets in health, in transport. How can we use our data sets to create collaborative synergy? So Silicon Savannah to me is a mindset, and it's a place where ideas meet. Now the challenge for us is to create an environment. Now, eventually we're going to say Konza equals Silicon Savannah. Konza is a platform, okay, where if all these minds come together, it becomes easy for them to co-locate in one location.
Morning. About maybe 10, 12, 13 years ago, when you mentioned the name Mike Macharia, or leave even Sevenseas, just Mike Macharia, the reaction you'll get like, who's that guy? No, don't do work with him, don't do. I mean, it was a very negative reaction. And now, 15 years later, it's a positive brand, you've built a business. Can you give us the key lessons you've learned in terms of transitioning the brand of Mike, as you as Mike Macharia, and also as SST to become a respected business and building value over those 15 years, and how you reconcile yourself with that? Yeah, and my second question, what's the most riskiest decision you've ever taken in your business?
My question is related to what she has asked. I would like maybe to hear from you, at 25 years old, getting started, how you came up with the idea, how you got funded, how you built your team, and how you grew the business.
By way of introduction, my very first interest that I would like you to elaborate is on the Knowledge for Life program at Sevenseas. That is how we can be involved, because I know there are still university students here who are either finalists or out and all that. Secondly, the greatest part I loved in your presentation is the happiness wheel. And the question that came to my mind is that on that very inner core, because until you settle the inner core, then the outer that's when the outer can flourish. That's the happy soul. So at what point do you really, how do you achieve that happy soul? And you also said that you are a happy soul. So how did you become a happy soul? And finally, which could be related to what the previous two have asked, is most companies, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years. Once a company has survived 10 years, then you know that's a company. Because they briefly outlive 1 year. Now, what is the greatest? Has there reached a point where you have seen Sevenseas is actually dying? Yeah, what's the greatest downfall? It's actually dying, and how did you revive it?
I think the first question is to the lovely lady here at the front. Now, when I look at my life when I started this business, I think one challenge that I found is that when you onboard people, a lot of people give you, before you learn, before you have, as a startup, before you get your rhythm and start knowing how to get the right teams in place, there's a lot of trial and error. So people come and give you wishful thinking. They overpipe themselves, they present themselves, because you don't have time to, you don't have an elaborate HR platform that is able to question a lot of what they say, right? So what happens, you start a journey, and I'm very trusting. You tell me you can do X, Y, Z, you can do X. Once you come to my organization, right, I then push you towards, as I said, my issue is persistence and passion. So I exert in you my passion and my persistence, and I don't lie about it. I'll push you to that breaking point. Now, many people, what happens, if they break, right, they say, Mike did, never did, right? But they never question and say, why did I break? It's not because, it's because you do not want to learn. And I think I recently met somebody in iLab, or the whole innovation city in Kenya, which is up there. And he said, look, Mike, working for you is the best thing that happened to me, because it shaped me and showed me how to deal with life in a way of excellence, in a way of attention to detail, because I'm very pushy. For instance, I just don't believe you can, there's some things you bring to my desk, I said, this is impossible, really, surely, right? So I push you, and some people here work with me, have worked with me before, I can see they've got great careers. When they leave my organization, they become superstars in the companies they go for. Because I show you how I push you beyond your comfort zone into what you think, and I push you to what you should be. And that is my philosophy. So today when I hire, when you come to the last interview, because now you've got an elaborate hiring system, by the time you come to my table, I tell you the truth. I tell you, hey, madam, hi, how are you? What are you going to be doing in the company? Because I have to interview everybody eventually. They come to my table for 10 minutes, and I sit with you for 10 minutes, and I tell you, 1, we are a company that thrives on excellence. Number 2, okay, we do not entertain nonsense, okay? So do what you need to do, but just be straightforward, right? We will make you a diamond in this company, right? So from day one, when you leave the company, you know, I'm gonna get my money's worth, and you know, and I always tell you, I'm gonna transform your career. And that is how I manage to transform. So eventually what happens, over years, people realize as they leave my organization, it's just part of life, and they go to other companies, they become superstars. Because what we help them become is what eventually molds them to become the next big thing. That's how we manage to transform. And after that, what happens? You grow as a business. You figure out stuff. You're a company, you started a company at 25 years. What do you know about HR? What do you know about emotional intelligence? What do you know? Everything is so theoretical. You don't even know what emotional intelligence is. You say, what? Emotional what? Intelligence, what is that? Right? So there's a lot of stuff you learn along the way, right? And then you find, okay, you go one day, you open Harvard Business Magazine, and you read something, you say, my God, this is so interesting. I think I've experienced this. Then you go and do sort of a management course or MBA, and then you find everything they're telling you, you're just laughing because it relates to what you've been doing. Is that correct? And then now for the first time you're in class challenging the lecturer. No, that's not correct. This is how it should be because I've experienced it. That's part of learning. And these are some of the challenges of running a company when you're very young, because there's a lot of stuff you learn along the way. The next thing in terms of risk decision, I think risky is every day. In terms of risky as a business, you wake up, you make decisions. So constantly, I think our DNA is risk. I think today in my life, I'm trying to get more people to hold me down so I don't take risky decisions. So around me, I have sort of put what I would call weights around me that ensure I don't fly away, right? Governance structures, having a good chairman of a board that help you, good friends that tell you, Mike, there is no way that is happening, right? Because I will fly too far. That's the problem. I push it too far. So riskier decisions, there are many. Some have been good, some have paid off, some have paid off higher. It depends. But constantly you're risking. Because what is life without risking, really? Now, in terms of setting up a business at 25, I must admit, I'm an accidental entrepreneur. I never thought I would be an entrepreneur. I just found an opportunity. I was seated somewhere, and the opportunity came to my table, and it was to go and help set up something in Rwanda for one of the national airlines, which is the national airline today. And I found myself in Rwanda, right? 2000 or something. 2000 in Rwanda. Rwanda had just come from war. Is that correct? You can imagine going to the streets. Buildings were still full of gunshots. There's a lot of stuff that happened in Rwanda. And I went there, I thought to myself, this is great opportunity. Nobody wants to come here. This is where I'm going to be. Is that correct? And that's how I ended up in Rwanda. When I was in Rwanda, I thought to myself, my first project, I said, this is nice. The second project, I said, this is amazing. The third project, I said, this is incredible. No, you see what happens, you're young. And youth is a great thing to have youth because you're very gullible. So what you do, you take the numbers you've made and then multiply that by, if you made this in 4 months, you multiply it by 3 times. then you think, my God, I'm made. Is that correct? That's the power of youth. Because then you start, your life operates on that, not to realize that the next 4 months, you've lost everything you made. And that becomes the journey across the life. Then you realize just because you're up doesn't mean you'll always remain up. And that brings to the next question in terms of, are there times when you've looked at the business and said, you could be almost wiped out? Yes, there are opportunities, I can tell you. I'll give you an example. My business is highly dependent on people, constantly. My business is highly dependent on large customers, right? Is that correct? My business is highly dependent on a market, right, which is extremely volatile. So you have no product. Your product is a third-party product. So the vendor comes and now directly is in the market. And the same vendor who had told you to build a business around their product now is hiring 50% of your staff. Okay? So within no time, you ask yourself, now, how is this thing going? Or the next time, what happens? The same vendors, every time you have all the major vendors coming in, you wait to see the staff attrition. Because they come in and double the pay. Because what happens, most of the vendors, their HR departments are not exactly in tune with what's happening in the marketplace. So what they come and offer salaries, double the price, or double, or two, 3 times. Within 1 year before those people, by doubling the pay doesn't mean you're going to get better performance, right? What happens, the people don't perform. And now you need to retrench. Most of those companies then, after 2 years, retrench that whole workforce. And the same guys come back to me for a job. And I say, how much are you earning? 3 times. I say, my friend, now that's the curse for you. Now you need to deal with that pay structure because your lifestyle is that pay structure. I can't afford to pay you. That's the first thing you have to deal with. So you realize I need to create my own product. The next thing is having large customers. Large customers and then diversifying your risk. You have large customers, and maybe they control 40, 60% of your business or 50% of your business. If you lose a large customer or you start hemorrhaging from a large customer in terms of business, that also becomes very challenging because what happens, you've already built your capability, your organization, core cost is people, is that correct? So it means you have trained people, you've equipped the human resource. Now, if you can't just retrench the people and say, it's not like America or Europe where you say, IBM just says, we've just retrenched 50,000 people. Okay? That's what you read. They've lost a big contract. What you do in the morning, you just tell 50,000 people to go. You cannot do that in my industry because what gives you that competitive advantage is the same people you have in the bench. Is that correct? So now the challenge you have is, do I maintain my bench of very qualified people who, if I tell them to go, they're going to get hired, but I've spent a lot of money training these people to get to a certain level. That's my competitive advantage. So what do? It's like a bank. Do you close branches because you've lost customers? What do you do? So the question remains, how will I transform this workforce beyond what I thought they could be doing because I've lost this large contract? And it could be for whatever reason. Could be, again, the multinational has come in and gone directly to the customer. Is that correct? And the customer has also said, I'm going to go directly to the vendor. So now you're in this position, right? You ask yourself exactly, it's like the missing middle, where down here, it's very easy to get into the business. At the top, the multinationals are coming. In the middle, you're being squashed in the middle. Is that correct? Constantly, there's a squash. The departments are saying we want to go direct and work with vendors. On the other side, you're creating value for them because you're the one who opened the doors for them. You created value in the market. They now became wary about the value. The moment they come into the country or the moment they realize there's value, they want now to come direct because the numbers are making sense. You get my point? That's where the challenge comes in. That's why now you start defining your business and realize, oops, I need to change this business. So the first thing is changing workforce and their way of behavior and their way of compensation and the way they think about. I tell them, look, you need to change your way of thinking. And then you need to start looking at yourself. You need to ask yourself, what am I very good at as a company? So you need to just be real with yourself. You need to figure out, what am I very good at? Then you will realize finally, we have to be good at an industry. We found them big multinationals who come in, have no clue about verticals. They come and say, we're going to do health. They do, everything is vanilla, you know? Everybody maintains at the vanilla level, right? So what you need to figure out is how can I deep dive within an industry? So you become very good at the industry. You become very good at understanding HIV, understanding renal, understanding radiology. You become the best within that industry. And you blend that capability, right, with your skill set such that you become, nobody can remove you from that value chain. So constantly you have value. So what happens, you change the equation such that it's no longer them, it's no longer you selling the products, it's them begging you to sell their products. That is a challenging journey because you're having cash burn. Cash burn, I mean, you can, the same workforce, you're paying them, you know you don't have a contract, you have to pay them. From an investor, they're telling you, Mike, ditch. You said, no. If I ditch, I have no business. So you can't just ditch. You know, it's not like fuel, you ditch and say, I'm going to refuel. Because the next place you go, there's no fuel. So you need to keep this plane up. And I always talk about it's like a 747. You've got a cargo, you can't ditch the cargo, right? You need to be there to a point where you're at a cruise level, right? So at the cruise level, now you're able to fly. And that, I can tell you, my friends, is a difficult journey to be in. But what keeps you there is clarity of thought and the right networks to make sure constantly you're not losing sight of where you want to be. And supportive people around you who tell you this can happen. And enough people who are willing to get into the dance floor with you. Okay? Now, finally, in terms of Happy Soul, no, K for Life. K for Life was an initiative that came out of our struggle for human talent. We found that there was a gap between university education and what we required in terms of an organization, in terms of skill. What happens then, we said, we've got a training organization in our company where we train people. We've got a bench, we've got seating capacity of 50 people. So on weekends, the training center is empty, and we've got 50 or 60 seating slots. Why don't we convert the seating slots on weekends to team up with universities and find a way to bring university students and then get our employees who have been trained by us to train some of these university students in terms of fundamentals, linking them from technology to business, in terms of, from what they're learning in school to industry. And this training course, we've done it for the last 4 years. I think we have 2,000 plus people who have been trained this program. I was very proud recently when I saw the presidential skill development program, 8 or 10 people that came from K for Life. So K for Life today, which we call Knowledge for Life, has become a synonymous way of development of talent. And it's this, what I call bit by bit by bit. Bit by bit, meaning over 4 years, you do 50 students over 1 weekend, and for 4 weeks, I've changed my way of looking at technology. That has been very transformational. I wish we could do this for 1,000 students a weekend. And at the end of the day, it costs us, look at it, as a company, what it costs us is nothing because the sunken cost is already in place. Finally, in terms of Happy Soul, I think your soul, I think, is an important part of your life. I think it's the most critical part of your life. How do you keep yourself happy? I think it is the way I keep myself happy. I avoid negative people. I avoid negative and unlucky people. Okay? What happens? People who are negative around your life tend to swap a lot of energy from you. Is that correct? So what I try and do constantly is keep myself highly spiritually grounded. Okay? First, spiritual grounded. How do you become spiritual grounded? It's not about going to church every weekend. Okay? Okay? That's not what I call spiritually. It's about understanding yourself, okay, and understanding your negative side of things and your positive sides, and trying to figure yourself at the heart, who are you when nobody is looking. That's a challenge, and that's a battle that constantly most of us have to battle with until we die. So it's a constant battle, right? But generally, it's also ensuring that you're happy, because who can be happy for you apart from yourself?
Negativity, you avoid negative people, and what was the second bit of that?
Unlucky people.
Unlucky.
Yes.
How do you judge if someone's unlucky?
You know what happens? Unlucky people, interesting. You know, I remember one time traveling with my friend, and he kept saying, no, you know, Mike, look, this is going to happen to me. I said, what do you mean it's going to happen to you? No? So constantly, you're doubting yourself. I don't know if you have people who constantly doubt themselves. So constantly, I'm always trying to encourage people who doubt themselves to move towards a positive side of things. Because if you lose the battle mentally, I think you've lost the battle, right? So negative people are the ones who mentally, you always say there's a cannot do attitude. So I avoid a lot of people, a lot of cannot do attitude. I just avoid you. If you're constantly, this cannot be done, this cannot be done, I just choose to ignore you or avoid you.
I know Joshua's got a question.
Mike reminds me of the belief that you must prepare to do what you believe you cannot do. You know, many times that is always the problem we're facing, you know. And ignore losers. Don't hang around losers, I can tell you, because the losers will take you nowhere. You're going to hang with the winners, isn't it? Now, one of the issues we struggle with business, and you spoke about it today, is this about fighting to become like another person. You know, I must win and you must lose. Bob and I talk about it. You know, Bob calls it the tyranny of the or. It's either Alican or Joshua. And you're a collaborator, you believe a lot in collaboration. Something we don't do in business, even especially for the younger generation. We don't speak about how can we together lift the platform for our country today. And maybe you speak a little bit more about how you want that to shape the future. How can we bring in "and" in the conversation? Because we all want to become kiosks. Every time everyone asks me about financial inclusion, we all want to create a new M-Pesa. It's going to take you a long time to create a new M-Pesa, if you ever will in your lifetime. Bob has already done it. I can guarantee you globally. So maybe we need to innovate a new M for transport, correct? Maybe a new M for healthcare. Maybe a new health for education. A new M for something else. A new M for holiday. That is where the money really is. But if you're going to spend all our time trying to become, you know those old kiosk shops in Kenya, you know, the one with a flat front, you know, the old shops, which Kenya has. Now, if you want to change that, can you imagine how much destruction we have to do across the country to create new shops? And I prefer to collaborate with winners, to don't waste resources. And you can speak that for the younger generation, because I believe, you know, we call ourselves as a business as a fast second mover. You know, it's probably a new term, fast second mover. What you say is that if Mike can innovate and build on it, we can latch into it and scale it. This is what we do. I mean, as a large organization, we have the network. I mean, with 255 branches today, I was telling Bob earlier, we can deploy Wi-Fi in all our branches in one day. When you walk into our branches, you find Wi-Fi across everyone across the region. Now that is what I'm calling fast scale mover or fast second mover. So could you speak a bit about this? Because we are always pulling a friend down, isn't it? You're always being pulled down about, I don't want you to become, I want you to be ahead. Those are the guys that call losers. So maybe you can answer that question about how do we bring in "and" in the equation?
First, I think it's the issue of scarcity and abundant mentality, right? So scarcity, I think we've seen it. Scarcity in that it has to be me. Is that correct? Because it's like the world is coming to an end, so I have to be the one with everything, and other people don't have to have anything. That's a scarcity mentality, and we've seen it across our country, right? We see it in politics, we see it across. So it's a mindset and a culture that we need to transform. But we can't wait for the politicians to change it for us. It has to start with us. And it's also a challenge I also realize in sports. When you look at Kenya, we are successful in individual sports, right? When it comes to collaborative sports, what happens? We don't do very well, right? Because why? I need to win as an athlete. I have to be the guy, 800-meter guy only, right? When it comes to soccer, common sports, we cannot, that doesn't work. We cannot be Messi and his team in Barcelona, where Messi is still individually successful, but Barcelona is also a successful team. How do we ensure? It's a whole mindset that we need to overcome. I think it starts with common things. It starts with, in our own different ways, how do you create that "and"? And as somebody said, why should I be building another financial platform when somebody else is building? I think we've seen it. Somebody builds a kiosk next to your house, the next kiosk pops up, right? That continues everything. Then the next guy builds an M platform, the next guy builds another M platform. Say, okay, I think we don't challenge ourselves enough to think and saying, okay, why can't I build on somebody else? It's okay. But also, I think there's also a challenge within corporates and within enterprise, the government, not giving opportunities, okay? And it's a conversation of, one Kenya says, give me a chance. Another Kenya says, I can only give you a chance if you prove yourself. So the challenge you have also is at different layers. At the enterprise level, we are telling the young people, you need to prove yourselves. But how do they prove yourselves if you don't give an opportunity in the first place? So I have to wait for you to die, right? For me to prove myself, right? So the only way to get to you is either to cause a revolution, right? Or to wait for you to die, right? So I think it's in everyday lives. It has started with our corporates giving opportunities to people who deserve it, right? Understanding even our procurement processes from process-driven to value-driven.
So let me ask my question like a proper Kenyan in 3 parts. I can stand in a room of Kenyans and insult them, I don't know. The first one, disappointment. Disappointment that you didn't answer the question from over there, which was, what's the value of your company? I was waiting for the answer because then I'd buy it. And maybe, because I came with my banker today. The second question, the second thing is to challenge you. And I think you said earlier, we have too many thinkers and not enough doers. Is it that we have too many thinkers or do we have too many talkers? You know, we're all on Twitter and you can see how much people talk. And actually often they talk without thinking. And so, is it true or is it not true? Huh? And so is it that we have too many thinkers or do we have too many talkers? And then the final part of the question, well, that's not really a question. The final part is that you're running out of time to be on the top 40 under 40. Right? So you can no longer look forward to that. But what you can look forward to is continuing to build this company, but you can't continue to build it. So, you know, Leo will come along and he'll take over the business or whatever. If you want to continue to transform lives, do you think you can continue to do that in the private sector, or do you have to move into the public sector? And if you move into the public sector, is it going to be governor or is it going to be president? Which one?
See, Bob, I thought this question is something you leave to when me and you are having coffee, right? But anyway, since it asked the question, what do we refer to as PhD? And PhD is the common thing is pulling down, right? It's like the crab mentality. The crab mentality, all of us should be in the bucket, right? Nobody should leave the bucket, right? It happens in our lives everywhere. In families, why is that guy special, right? It's a conversation that we need to allow ourselves to come out from. But it also starts with you, because just when somebody is successful, that's the time now you're trying to pull them down, right? You envy, as opposed to looking at it collaboratively. Why should it be Safaricom? Why should it be this guy? It's constantly the battle, right? And I think it's also a conversation where that happens is sort of how you are socialized. Schools, you're number 1, you're number 40. You know, you're the last guy in class, right? So constantly you know that I have to go for my position, right? You're in Alliance, you're not in this school, right? Then it's published in the newspaper like this is the top school, this is the... So you grow up knowing that my school was never in the schools to be. That's part of a problem. It's a problem and something we need to change. And the only way I think we can change that is by having this thing called national champions. It is okay. It is okay for Sevenseas to become a national champion in technology. Because it means I'll have enough time to champion some of the causes for you. Meaning when I sit and drive a National Innovation Forum, nobody pays me a bloody penny to be in that forum. And it's so frustrating, trust me, to eventually get that and to get His Excellency the President to come and appreciate that there's something going on in this industry, right? It took a long time to get that, right? But you can only do that. I can only do that when I'm not struggling in my business, right? Because I need to create time to do that, right? Then when I go to Nigeria, I'll open the door for you. Right? If KCB go to Tanzania, they follow with them, they follow the suppliers. When the Chinese companies come here, what do? They bring with them everybody else. That's how it works. Now, the moment you understand that is that when the crab leaves the bucket, it will come back with food for everybody else. And then the next crab, and the next crab, and the next crab. Now, that way of thinking can only be done when we build national champions, right? And that's how you find companies. If American companies come and become successful here, what do? With them bring consulting companies, with them they come with other companies. That's how they grow. You conquer, other people come with you. And that's the only way we need to start aligning and allowing other people to see that with growth, if I grow with you. The next conversation is about talkers, thinkers, and doers. No, doing is hard. Doing is always hard. I sit in meetings sometimes, not in my organization, because I've come to a point I say, guys, out of this meeting, what are the outputs? Okay? We have meetings where people talk. You know, we are a very, very talkative nation. You know, one of the best things we do, if you talk to a tourist who comes to Kenya, is that I love Kenya. Everybody talks to me. You go to a tourist who goes to a bar in Nairobi says, wow, Kenyans talk. They have opinions about everything. So it's excellent when you're trying to drive tourism and people to have good conversations, right? But in terms of getting things done, right, you need to walk up and do it. So 1% is inspiration and 9% is doing. Is that correct? Talk. And also this is part of our politics. The politicians come and tell us, I will do, I will do, I will do. Vote me. Then what happens? It's not done. Then what happens? Then you vote them again because they told you I will do, I will do. So we need to become a country as we move on that is based on quality in terms of output as opposed to what you think you're going to do as inputs, right? That's part of the challenges we're going to face. And I think it's individually you need to ask ourselves, do I talk too much? So it's not even about thinkers. Because again, if you have too many thinkers, we get into a analysis paralysis mode. So the question is just, can I just do? Right? What do I need to do? We need more people on the dance floor doing what needs to be done. And that, I think, is also part of leadership. As we said, leadership is overrated. It's the second guy who comes and says, guys, I believe what this guy is doing, let's proceed and do it. In terms of public sector, can we make changes while in private sector? Yes, I guess. Do I ever have aspirations to be in government? At the moment, I don't think so. At the moment, I don't know. Let me tell you, I have no clue. At the moment, I think I'm on a journey. Well, if tomorrow I find there's need to, I will get into it, right? Because at some point, you get to a point and say, look, we can't just stop. We need to do something. If that day comes, I'm happy to call onto the challenge. But at the moment, in terms of what I'm doing, in terms of ensuring that I can be part of change, it's again back to the happiness wheel. We talked about some of the wheels. I need to move beyond my company to the community, to Kenya as a country, right? So I need to understand, why should another entrepreneur undergo the challenges I went through? Why? Why should another entrepreneur, just because I did 15 years, I say the next guy should also do 15 years like me, right? The next guy should do this. No, I need to ensure, how can I allow that the next person that comes on board as an entrepreneur also has an easier challenge. Doesn't have to do 10 years of hardship, can do 2 years of hardship, not 10. Such that my son can be able to do 6 months of hardship to take off. Is that correct? Because now, you think by building this empire, that your son is going to work less. What they're just going to destroy your empire because they never learned anything. So the point is, how do we create and how do you ensure that as you become successful, you then allow future generations to also move ahead, right? And the only way to do that is by, number one, I'm a chairman of Kenya IT Outsourcing Authority, which is critical, which I try and rally a lot of entrepreneurs to come and become partners because what you learn, to engage government, you need collective synergy. You can't engage government as an individual. That never happens. So as you do, you start taking positions across private sector that allow you to champion individual causes. And that together, we're able to then drive policy, and not as an individual person. Because what happens, if you drive it individually, it becomes a personal battle, not an individual battle. That's why you've seen the likes of KEPSA, you've seen the likes of TESPOC, you've seen the likes of all these organizations that have Kenya Association of Manufacturers that now is rallying government to do the right laws to be able to protect the manufacturing industries. And that's some of the things I hope to be doing in terms of driving change across the country. But one of the things I would say that I'm happy that the president announced this Enterprise Kenya setup. It was an initiative we've driven for long. It's an enterprise that will be able to allow a lot of entrepreneurs to thrive. Because a lot of entrepreneurs, when you stand there and you're not sure where to go, who do you talk to? Okay? Intellectual property disputes, capital disputes. You're looking at growing your business to go to Nigeria. How do you go to Nigeria? You're a small guy. How do you get access to Ministry of Foreign Affairs if you're just a startup and you've got a great idea you can take to Nigeria? Otherwise, you find companies, if it's American Chamber of Commerce, they come here, they come with entrepreneurs. The entrepreneurs get open access to some of our opportunities. Now, how do you ensure that tomorrow, you're with a great idea and you're not politically correct, or you don't have all the money in the world, you can go to Nigeria and the same ministry is able to allow you, open for you the doors, appropriate doors to make that pitch.
You know, it was a privilege hosting you today, Mike, and a privilege having also such a distinguished audience, because it is the audience also that makes this engagement. And there were so many points that you touched on. If I can just touch on a few, which I think make a big difference. I agree with that abundance scarcity theory. I think as Kenyans, and I like the example of sport, I think, we don't realize that all of us together can make 1 + 1 = 11. It doesn't have to equal 2. And I think, Mike, that was one of the big messages that came out of what you said today. Very proud of what you said, of your success, and particularly of your vision. And you left us, I think, with a really important point, which the President raised in his State of the Union address, which Bob has had some challenges with this week. And I just want to say that, it means a lot. It means a lot, I think, to here on the frontier, to run your institution with 21st century governance principles. And I am proud to say that I have friends here in this room today who are running businesses in that manner: Mike, Bob, Joshua, and many others. And I think that's how we're going to change the entire dynamics and make enormous opportunities for our people. I'd like to thank Mike again, because we learn more here than we'd learned in so many other places. This is a little university of our own. I'm grateful to the Intercontinental for giving us this facility. I'm grateful to Bob's support throughout from the beginning, and to Joshua's, and to everybody, because people here have been coming for years. And finally, Mike, truly inspirational talk, as I expected it would be. Thank you so much.